program. I'm Kathy, the CEO of Folio, and I'm very, very lucky to introduce our guest for today, Logan Chadde. Logan leads marketing for Google's consumer sustainability efforts. He's worked on core product marketing for home energy and EV features, moments like Google Month, influencer marketing campaigns, and keynote events. He basically has a dream job. And what I appreciate most from your career journey is your persistence and ability to navigate into a career that aligns with your skills, your interests, and what the world needs. You've really mastered the art of ikigai when it comes to career development. Logan has a degree in organizational studies from the University of Michigan and began his career working in policy design at the University of Michigan and the Environmental Council. Actually, let me re-say that. Logan has a degree in organizational studies from the University of Michigan and began his career working in policy design at the Michigan Environmental Council and the New America Foundation. He's also very creative and artistic. Before Google, Logan was a multimedia journalist at Michigan Radio and the University of Michigan. He traveled the world producing stories about entrepreneurship, policy, travel, and sustainability. Logan, thank you so much for being here. The stage is all yours.
Thanks. So happy to be here. Super excited to, share my journey, the ups and downs with everyone. And so I will pull up my slides. Cool. Okay. So as you all can tell, I did sneak in some thoughts about life at the end as well, because I think that stuff's important to keep in mind beyond just the work. But quickly, where I'm from, what made me me, as Kathy mentioned, or you probably could tell from all the Michigan references she made, I'm from Michigan, this small, tiny town in the Upper Peninsula, which has America's least on-time airport and gets so much snow every year. It's unbelievable. Really into photography, and these are some of my pictures from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I think it's a really gorgeous place. Highly recommend visiting. My mom has an Airbnb if anyone needs to stay up there. A few fun facts. Barack Obama follows me on Twitter, but also a lot of other people, so it's not that special. I did have a pet raccoon growing up, pictured on the right with my dog Molly. And then one time in college, I had my laptop stolen, but got it recovered with like theft protection software, which was like local news bait, and they totally ate it up. And so that was my 15 minutes of fame. As Kathy mentioned, a lot of my college internship experiences were kind of Michigan related and like more like environmental policy and transportation policy related. So yeah, some like nonprofits, think tanks, some like multimedia journalism, a startup in Detroit called Glocal, which is on the right. And I would say the startup in Detroit was like my first introduction to tech or like working in tech. I think I'd always been interested in tech and like made my first website in like third grade and stuff like that. But that was my first intro to like working at it more of like a fast-paced tech startup. And I found it quite a bit different from some like the more like old school nonprofits I was working at before and really liked it. And so that's kind of what drew me to Google. So I actually started out, I got my foot in the door, not through the internship, which I got rejected from, and not through initially landing a full-time sales role in the Ann Arbor office, which I also got rejected from, but I found my way in through like a contractor program, like a 1-year contract, and that was to work on Google Plus, if anyone remembers that being a thing. And so essentially I would try to help brands and notable people and celebrities like onboard onto the platform to hopefully get other people to use Google Plus. None of that worked, for the record. None of that worked. But some of the cool things we did, like we did host like a Barack Obama like Google Hangout on air, which was kind of like a live stream, like or like a meet call that you like record and post. So I got to like help select like which people would talk to him. And then I did get converted to full time after that 1 year into Google's Associate Product Marketing Manager or APMM program. And so then I worked on Google Play for a little bit, which I didn't really like. I was like kind of like helping design like gift card stuff. It was kind of interesting, but didn't love it. And then got to pick where my second rotation would be and picked the Google Photos team, which I absolutely loved because I already, as I mentioned, I'm super into photography. But that was my first taste of like core product marketing, like working really close with the product team, working really close with designers, engineers, et cetera. And really loved that. And one of the campaigns we did that went really well in 2016 was this like, a lot of people had 16 gigabyte iPhones at the time, and so they were constantly running out of storage. And so we were basically pitching that, hey, you can actually upload all your photos for free to Google Photos, and then you won't get this like error message anymore. So it was a really fun campaign. And then after that, I moved over to the Google Lens team and like launched that in 2017 and did a bunch of other interesting stuff. Lens was like our visual search tool, so like searching with a photo. Cool. So what I do now, I've always been super interested in sustainability. I was like a sustainability scholar in college, and I don't know, my mom kind of instilled a big interest in the outdoors and sustainability in me growing up. So this has always been a lifelong passion. Um, for people trying to pursue lifelong passions, I always think there's like kind of two ways at it. Like especially if, so for example, say you want to work in sustainability at a big tech company like Google, the two ways, one would be like go do sustainability stuff from the beginning and be like a real sustainability expert, such that when Google is trying to hire a new sustainability expert in this field, like you are right there and can be like, I have all this expertise in this subject area. Maybe less expertise in tech, but a lot of expertise in sustainability. Or the other path is like try to go get a job at the place or the company that you want to work at. So that was a little bit more of the path I took, where like I just tried to get my foot in the door at Google and then worked my way up, learned how to become a good product marketing manager. So then when this role came up, I was basically like, hey, I have all these transferable skills that will apply to this area, and I'm really passionate about the area. And so then that worked out for me. But I don't know if one way or the other is truly better. They're just kind of different. But yeah, so now I think about our different consumer features. So stuff like in Maps, search, and travel. I have a map screenshot on the right here. So if you ever see this in Google Maps, it'll sometimes tell you like, hey, you can save like X% of fuel if you like. Sometimes it's the same amount of time. Sometimes it's like 1 or 2 minutes slower, that sort of thing. And so for individuals, this is not like a huge impact, but across the like, billion people using Google Maps, it does end up being a pretty significant impact every year. Yeah. So, and then just high level at Google, consumer sustainability stuff, we think a lot about it in like these two big buckets for individuals, like transportation and energy are usually the two highest impact things. So there's a couple examples of other projects we work on, just to give you a taste. One is like contrails. A lot of people or conspiracy theorists would call them chemtrails. It's like the trail after an airplane that you see in the sky. So these things are actually quite bad for the environment, but just not in the chemtrail way. Like they're not poisoning us. They are more just like creating clouds at an altitude that causes the earth to warm up. And so it was one of those problems I just like never thought about, but it's actually pretty significant. And so we're using AI to like help pilots and flight controllers like know when to slightly adjust their altitude to avoid pockets of high humidity zones, and then they don't create these contrails. I think it's really cool. The other one I'll mention is Project Greenlight. So this is using Google Maps driving trends to help cities better time traffic lights. Like I think we all know the feeling of like you go like red light to red light. And so this is helping traffic be a little bit more coordinated. So there's less idling at intersections, which reduces emissions. And then stuff in maps of like, if you're going to drive somewhere, we might just like nudge you and suggest like, hey, actually like the train, if there is a train or a subway or a bike, might be a bit faster. And the last one I'll mention is we're using satellite data to help analyze the 3D, like how much sun a roof gets using 3D modeling based on satellite data. And then that can help you do a super quick, free, instant quote for like how much solar, if you got solar on your roof, how much that would save you per year over time. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what actually is core product marketing. So I was just kind of mentioning the different products areas that I work on, but like what is the actual day-to-day job? So I think especially at a big tech company like Google, there's a lot of different types of marketing, which is something I didn't realize when I was first joining. And people's jobs can look wildly different, even though they're all kind of within marketing. So there's people who just work on brand stuff. So that's like raising brand awareness and ensuring brand guidelines and running big campaigns on TV. There's people who only focus on growth. So that'd be what are just ways we get more engagement or downloads for like this app, for example. GTM stands for go to market. So that's also people similar to brand, but they're just focused on like how do we like launch stuff and get it out into the world, like these initial like campaigns. There's policy marketers who think about like, hey, if some like state or country is proposing a policy that we don't agree with, they would like go try to make the case to people that that's a bad idea. But so I think core product marketing is the most generalist out of all those. Like I end up interfacing with all those different teams, but I'm kind of like seen as the core owner for some of these products or projects. So yeah, basically a connector to a bunch of these other teams. You can kind of see I kind of sit within the cross-functional team of engineering, PM, design, press and comms, legal, et cetera. And then depending on what the product I'm working on needs, I will go interface with any of the teams on the right that are like these more like expertise teams within Google to depend on what I'm trying to achieve. So again, to restate like what I actually do, it's super broad. So it's everything from, as we're thinking about, okay, what features should we build in the sustainability space, I might be like, okay, let me go do some market research and ask people and figure out who our target audience is and what they care about and what they need, and then I'll give that to the product teams. And then in terms of the positioning, that's be like, okay, we're going to launch a new feature. What do we call it? How do we talk about it? Like, what should be the two things we tell people about it? How does it fit within the larger Google brand? That type of thing. So that's really interesting work as well. And then the actual launch is when, okay, now let's like write a Google blog post and let's like figure out what our social posts are going to be and let's brief some journalists, or maybe it's like an event script, all that kind of thing, or like a launch video. And then the growth side of it is like, okay, this thing's already launched and maybe like we're actually not seeing a lot of people notice it in the app, or we don't have good enough retention. Just like what are the different tactics we can use to improve that. So as I was mentioning, like a lot of this depends on like where the product is in its life cycle. So if I were starting on a new marketing project, I would be asking like, what does this product and what does this team need from me? Like, do they just need help setting a vision for the product? Do they need just like research and insights? Does this thing just like actually need additional functionality and I can help them figure that out? Does it need me to come in and help them like figure out how to launch this thing and what to call it? Does it need more growth? Does it need more attention, et cetera? But at Google, we typically say marketing at its most fundamental is like knowing the user, like who are you speaking to and what do they need, knowing the magic, which is what we call like the product features, and so then like connecting those two, essentially, like how do we make sure the pain points and needs people have are like met with our products, and then making sure those people know that those products exist to help them. Things I like about my job, I love that I get to do this like mix of working with product and engineering teams, but also get to do the more creative side of marketing as well, like maybe create some launch videos or like work with YouTube creators. Like we did a partnership with Mark Rober earlier this year on a video about that contrails project I was telling about. So that was really fun to work on. But yeah, fundamentally, I think it's really, this job gets like much easier if you like care about the product you're working on and like have a personal passion for it. I think if you don't care at all about the product you have to market, it obviously gets a little hard to feel inspired enough to do good work about it. I also love doing research. I just like learning about people and how people think and how they make decisions and what they care about. And so I always think that's a really interesting part of the job. And then working with great people. I mean, I think there's a lot of great people in general out there. I found the people at Google to be great enough that I've stayed here for about 12 years. So yeah, I think that's always really important. If you're working with bad people, it doesn't really matter what type of work you're doing, what type of product you're on, like you're gonna have a bad time. So definitely make sure like you like the people you end up working with. Okay, things I don't like about my job. I think I'll preface this by saying I think every job has its annoying parts. Like I'm sure Kathy loves her job, but I'm sure there's definitely some annoying parts to her job too. And so I think it's really about thinking about like what annoying parts are you down to tolerate, or like everything's about trade-offs. So like what are the trade-offs you're willing to make? I'm sure there's some unicorn out there who like loves everything about their job and life, but you know, not me. There's usually at least like one person I've found like on a team or at a company you might not get along with perfectly. Like your personalities might just not mesh. So you always have to kind of like figure out how to manage that. And then another thing, as Kathy mentioned, I like doing a lot of creative stuff myself, whether that's like editing videos or making websites. But I've found being a product marketing manager, like the manager part of that is not necessarily about managing other people. It's about like managing projects. And so I'm the one who like just sets the strategy for like what we should be doing. But like anytime we actually have to go make a video or make a website or something else, like I'm working with other creative people who are the ones actually doing the moving the pixels around or like shooting the video. And then I'm more just like giving feedback on that. So I had to learn very quickly in this role that like how you giving feedback well is just as important as like whether or not you know how to make a video. Because like you really, it's a terrible way to give feedback to just be super prescriptive and be like, oh, please move this over here, move this over here. It's more about telling people like the creative challenge you're trying to solve and letting the creative experts who are professionals solve it for you. Yeah, and then big company problems. So yeah, after 10 11, maybe 12 years now. I'm still a senior product marketing manager. I'm not a director. I'm not a C-suite executive. I'm not a VP, none of that stuff. And so I think there's always trade-offs to be had. The flip side is, I have like a pretty stable job. It's a pretty normal, like 9 to 5 hours. So like I can have hobbies outside of work or do other stuff. But my lifetime, I'm never going to get like fabulously wealthy or like strike it huge on a startup like hopefully Kathy you will do. It's just trade-offs. And so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It is what it is. Okay, a few tips for you all on if you are interested in marketing, like here's some like skills and classes I've used a lot. In college, I took some behavioral science classes, and there's a lot of like great books and other things on this topic. But I think the core of marketing is like understanding how people make decisions. I think this applies to like product management and other tech stuff too. But I think the tactics and channels you would use and like the specific ways you do marketing are going to change. But if you fundamentally understand how people make a decision, that it like kind of equips you to make the right decisions and all these things, regardless as things change. Writing well, I think, is really important. I know now there's like many AI tools that can help you write really super well, but I still think it's really good to just like be able to do this yourself. So practicing that and like writing really concisely, I think is something I wish was pushed more in like our academics. Like I feel like they're often setting like high page limits, like write 8 pages, when actually I'm like in the real world, it's much more impressive to be able to write one page really, really well versus like 8 or 10 pages. And then that website I found really helpful for like learning about typography and formatting. Creative briefs are typically the thing that I hand off to a creative team. So I'm essentially outlining like what's the problem we're trying to solve, who are we targeting, what do I need from you, and then I would hand that off to like a creative agency. And so that is a skill in itself that takes a lot of people like years to master, but is really helpful. Already talked about creative feedback. Naming things I think is really fun if you're at all interested in the space of like how did things become called what they're called. There's some good book, or one of the good books I like on this is called Don't Call It That. Nailing workplace basics. I think I kind of take it for granted now that I've been in the corporate world for so long. I like kind of know this stuff, but if you're new to it, I think like a book like How to Write an Email, it's kind of cheeky. It's about more than that. But that's like a fun one that I like giving people who are super new to corporate life. And then also I think it's a real superpower to be able to like visualize your ideas. And this has never been easier with all the AI tools we have now, but like being able to quickly share an idea with a visual, I think is always much more impactful than just trying to describe it. Cool. Everything I just said, caveat, this is my own experience, which may or may not be like right for you. I've spent all my career essentially post-college at Google working on like non-revenue driving products. So again, everyone's experience is going to be super different. But with that as a caveat, these are some of the job and life things I've learned. I already mentioned how important people are. I think hard skills can help open doors. Like if you are really good at video editing or building a website, I think that can maybe help you land like internships or first jobs and just help you stand out versus somebody who might have the exact same degree as you. The third is try not to stress out too much about what your first job is. And I think it's a great thing to like just try things out or prototype them, like figure out what you're drawn to when you get into a flow state and when you don't. And then the fourth, I think I had a lot of success early in my career by doing more than just what was asked of me, like do the things that somebody else like didn't think to ask you to do, but you were like, hey, I like have some ideas about this, and so I'm gonna like write a bunch of these down in a doc or make some slides, or I think this product could be way better if we had a feature like this. Just like go ahead and make that and shop it around and pitch it. Like worst case scenario, people think like, cool, this person like really cares about this space and has a lot of ideas, and that's great, even if none of them get implemented. Fifth, I think this one's tough, and I think early in your career, I would encourage you to say yes more than you say no, but at the same time, you have a very finite amount of time, like in the day, in the month, in the year. And so I do think there have been times in my career, like in college, where I feel like I kind of overcommitted myself and ended up not did a bunch of things like not super well or not as well as I'd want to. And so I do think in general, if possible, try to like do a few things really well, or like a few commitments really well, as opposed to spreading yourself too thin. But yeah, I think it's really, I've always found it's really hard to say no to things that I actually really do want to do. But that is kind of the key there, for both mental health and just like have time to do things well. Sixth, money is a means to an end. So I think as you're thinking about maybe like what career you're excited about, which like obviously you should factor in like what careers are more lucrative than others, and like, but like I think that's only important such that that money would unlock the lifestyle that you want. Like if you aren't somebody who really cares about having super nice clothes, a nice car, super nice house, then like you don't really need that much money unless you're planning to like donate it or something else. Like think about how much money would cost to achieve the lifestyle you want and the location you want, that sort of thing, and like that can kind of be like your minimum or floor that you're shooting for. Cool. Seven. For me, writing is thinking. Maybe other folks are different, but if I like really need to clear my head on something, I find like just starting to write something in a doc and like structure my thoughts is really helpful for me. Um, and then eighth, something I read a long time ago in like a Tim Cook interview, was like how he was like, I like to focus on like strategy, execution, and people in roughly equal parts. And I've always found that kind of helpful. Is like every once in a while, like maybe once a month or once every few weeks, I'll just check in on myself and be like, have I been spending enough time these past few weeks on strategy, execution, people in roughly equal parts? And it's natural for you to flex in some areas over others as weeks go by, but try to make sure you're like keeping uh, abreast of like what's the big picture and our strategic focus. Make sure you're also having time to like actually do the stuff you need to do, and then make sure you're also spending time to invest in the people around you, because I think that's super critical as well. And finally, this one is perhaps the hardest one of all, which is taking time in your day, whatever that means, whether it's 30 seconds or 30 minutes or maybe longer, to like not absorb the thinking and voices of others. It's really hard. Like whenever you're bored, it's so easy for me to like want to go scroll on Reddit or Twitter or social media or read the news. And so, but what I found is like I'm just constantly bombarding my brain with like the thinking of others, and it doesn't really give my brain a ton of time and space to like come up with new ideas or think for myself. So, and this is kind of why people call them like shower thoughts, is because like you're not. It's like the one time you're not bombarding your brain with other information. And so I think the more you can do this, like take a walk without your phone around the block or something, I've always found it really rewarding. Cool. I think my almost last slide is just happiness, because I think we all want to be happy, and so it's good to keep this in mind as well. That like all the research we have and what makes people happy is like relationships matter more than anything else. So as best you can, try to be proximate to the people you care about, or just make sure you set aside time to invest in the people around you. But that is the number one thing to optimize for if your goal in life is to be happy, which maybe it's not. Maybe it's like impact or something else beyond yourself, which is all great. But just keep that in mind. It's like not money, it's not possessions, it's relationships. The other thing I've always heard is like the secret to happiness is recognizing when you're happy. And so definitely think like being grateful, and just like if you find yourself in a happy moment, stop, pause, and appreciate it. And then finally, you've probably heard stuff like this before, but I do think like getting enough sleep and getting some exercise, which like Kathy is amazing at, and like trying to eat well, like that sort of stuff does set you up to make everything else in your life a little bit easier, which I think is great. And then I already talked about materialism and stuff like that, but I'm not a very materialistic person. So, but I mean, possessions are nice things are nice, but I've always found like even if I get like a nice thing, like a new mountain bike or something else, like I will reset my happiness baseline within a few months. And I definitely appreciate having it, but it's not like it's like giving me outsized happiness on an ongoing basis. Like you usually come to a new equilibrium. So again, go back to number one, invest in relationships. Cool. 2 books that changed my life. Factfulness is about it's like a very optimism. These 2 books are super similar. Factfulness is not the end of the world. Very similar. They like kind of show data around the world on like how things are getting better, and that stuff doesn't really make the news on a day-to-day basis. And so I think that was like really helpful for me to better understand like what progress is being made and how it happens over very long time periods. And then if you are at all interested in working on sustainability or climate things, 2 places I would recommend checking out are this workonclimate.org, and then there's a group called Climate Base, and they have like thousands of different sustainability and climate related roles. But that is it.
Yay, awesome. Thanks so much, Logan. Um, okay, there's so much we could dive into. So I'm trying to figure out, there's like all these questions in here. I'm trying to like clump them into groups. There's a whole cohort on like your habits. So I think folks are interested
Mm.
in how you started this habit of self-auditing and reflecting. Was that something you'd done throughout college, or like when did it start in life and what prompted you to start it?
Interesting. Um, Man, I don't know if I can identify the one time. Honestly, there's probably, I could think of more times when I wish I would have kind of stopped and done more self-reflection. So I almost think if you can like put a recurring meeting with yourself on your calendar or something else, I think that could be really helpful. To just be like, okay, are things going well? Where am I not doing super well? There was a book by a Stanford professor called Designing Your Life, which I always really liked and read it early in my career. And that was similar to what I was talking about, like strategy execution people. That one was having you assess your life on work, health, relationships, and play. Play being like hobbies or just other things that bring you joy that aren't related to work. And so I will at least once a year, but usually more often than that, we'll try to find time to just think about those four buckets in my life. And if I feel usually some are like going really well and some maybe not so well, but I think just it's all about kind of keeping it in balance and understanding the trade-offs. Like sometimes it is okay to maybe put, I don't know, put work on hold to invest in relationships or put play on hold to invest in your health or, that sort of thing. But I do just think checking in on yourself, ideally once a month, maybe more, and seeing how things are going is really, really helpful.
Definitely
Did that
agree.
answer the question?
Sort of. I think you recommended that people do check on themselves once a month, but it's hard
Yeah.
to, yeah, figure out like where did this habit start? It's almost like you just start doing it and it's great and we don't know why.
I guess, I mean, yeah, for me, it was more just like reading books in that space, like that Designing Your Life book, or just like that one interview I happened to catch with Tim Cook or something else. But yeah, I don't know if I can't think of one single time when it like started for real. I think it's like a slow incorporation into life. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of habits, are there any habits you're trying to start new lately, that you're hoping
Mm.
will have a positive impact in how you approach life?
Um, yes. The issue is I've said this for the past like 2 years for my New Year's resolutions, but it's like to try to rebalance the amount I'm creating in the evenings versus only consuming. I think it's really easy to get home from work and just like feel kind of drained and be like, okay, I just want to like watch YouTube on the couch or read a book or whatever it is, or like read the news, etc. I'm trying to like balance that more with like actually taking time to either write or edit a video together or I don't know, just like creation, do more creation. That's one. I think exercise. I mean, I'm always in awe of like how consistent you are, Kathy, with exercise. And I feel like I'm somebody who like doesn't have the like super strict morning routine where I like go do this sort of exercise for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I wish I was, but I do still try to like make sure every day for like 20 or 30 minutes I'm doing something, whether that's just taking a walk around the block or going for a bike ride or pickleball or tennis or basketball or frisbee or going to the trampoline warehouse in San Francisco or something else. I think I'm maybe somebody who's like more into the variety of stuff. So that's one too.
I feel like you're not giving yourself enough credit. Just for folks that are in the audience, Logan does these very long rides, which are very impressive. So clearly you are very fit. I wouldn't worry. All right, so let's see. I guess this is like the quintessential question. So you've had an awesome career, and you shared some really good learnings. Are you open to sharing some like stories that are either like embarrassing or tough situations that you had to navigate and what you learned? It's a tough one to reflect on. So if you don't have anything, don't worry.
Yeah, yeah. Um, this is kind of silly, but at one point in college, I put together a list of like all the places I got rejected from. And I do think humans in general, human psychology, like you do tend to remember like the kind of negative things almost more than you remember the positive things, like how much people helped you to get there. But I did remember like, it was like a business fraternity at Michigan that rejected me and like these internships and like I mentioned like the first like two times I applied to Google, I got rejected. And I don't know. For me, that was like kind of helpful of like, this is like good motivation for me to like work harder and try harder, that sort of thing. I don't know if it's always the most mentally healthy thing to do. I think maybe balance it by also making what I call a to-do list, which is like things you've either done recently or in your career or anything else. Of just like, hey, look, I've like accomplished some stuff. Okay, back to your question though of like other embarrassing or other things. Hmm.
It could be like
What was it?
related to what you thought. There's another question that's related to what you thought you wanted to do going into college, and then when you came out
Hmm.
of college, what you actually wanted to do. That in itself is always an interesting journey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man. Um, I mean, I was super into like policy stuff, as I was kind of mentioning before. So I was really debating between like a public policy degree versus the organizational studies program at Michigan. I just happened to get accepted into the organizational studies one first. And so then that kind of made my decision for me in a sense. I wasn't like crazy strategic about it. I think in high school, I always like thought Google seemed really cool because I would see the pictures of people like sitting on their little bouncy balls at their desks and stuff like that. I don't know. I was just like, oh, that seems like a fun place to work. And so that was sort of a North Star for me or like a company that I was always really interested in. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I've gone through various stages of my life. Like at one point in high school, I think I wanted to be an ACLU lawyer. I think before that, I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. Yeah, I don't know. I think the crazy thing about life is like I probably could have picked any one of those paths and been pretty happy and satisfied. My life would obviously look much different. But yeah, I think again with life, it's like there's not very rarely are there like very clear right and wrong choices. There's usually just choices with different trade-offs. Um, yeah.
It does sound like you're the type of person who, like, once you've committed to something, you like really dive into it. Is that fair to say?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I guess that's a good trait in itself, right? Make a decision, commit to it, and do it fully. And then if you feel like you fully don't like are not happy in it, then you can always move to something else. But give it a real
Totally. Yeah.
try.
I mean, I guess on that, I know something folks will talk about at work is like differentiating between decisions where once you make them, like that is the final, there's no backing out. Like, I don't know. It just is like going to change everything. There's no going back. Like, that's one type of decision. The other type of decision is like you make a decision, but if the outcome of that decision isn't what you want, it's like pretty easy to like press the undo button and like change it or pivot to something else. And so I think it's helpful to keep in mind when you're making like a core life decision, like which one is going to be dramatic and unchangeable. Like, I don't know, maybe like breaking up with like a long-term partner or something else is like, I don't know, maybe there's an undo button, but like it's pretty hard at that point. Versus if you're just being like, oh, should I like go do this thing for like 2 or 3 months or try this out or, just like understand the stakes of the decisions you're making. I think can help like when should you stress a lot about a decision versus when is it kind of okay to just be like, you know what, let's just like go try this thing. And if it doesn't work out, we'll pivot. Honestly, many decisions in life are like you can kind of pivot out of them if you end up wanting to.
Okay, well, that's a good transition to the next question about how you make decisions, which I know is a very broad question. But do you follow any like I don't know? I know that a lot of PMs, like product managers or product marketing managers, have like decision-making frameworks that they apply to in work, and then sometimes they carry over to life. Do you have any of those, or do you generally just like I don't know, any sort of process in making good decisions that you could share?
Hmm. Wow. I wish I had something like so amazing and like pithy to share with you. I feel like there's so much content on the internet that you could find from like I don't know, VCs like Paul Graham or something. I don't know. Like I'm sure there's all sorts of people who have much better frameworks than I do. Um, but uh, I guess I keep going back to like understanding the trade-offs of the decision you're going to make and and again going back to like is this a permanent thing that like I cannot get out of, or can I reassess in a few months and then pivot from there? Yeah, I'll think after this too. If there's, I'm sure there's like probably stuff I've written down over the years that helped me, but on an ongoing day-to-day basis, uh, I don't know. Yeah. I think it's really just like trying to make sure I fully understand the trade-offs, but also being very open to like trying new things and prototyping. I think a lot of stuff in life you like won't really know unless you try it or get yourself some exposure to that. I guess I'm thinking about this largely from like a career decisions type of framework, but obviously there's lots more types of decisions too.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you use the trade-offs idea and then like opportunities, right? As like the upside
Mm.
potentially greater than saying no, which is a good way to think about things.
Yeah, totally. Opportunity cost is massive, and I think like knowing there is some sort of like I don't know if I forget the exact name. People call it like Bayesian like decision making or something like that, which is like where you multiply like the potential impact by like the likelihood it is to happen. And so sometimes like maybe there's only a 10% chance if you join this startup that you're going to become like a billionaire. But that trade-off might be better for you than if there's like a 80% chance you do this other job and become like a not billionaire, but like fine. I don't know. I think it's just a way of like trying to help contextualize and understand like the risk reward of the decisions you're making. So if there's a super high potential reward, then you by this you should like kind of be willing to take on a little bit more risk for said thing. Kind of intuitive when I say it out loud, but it is can be a helpful framework. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Definitely sometimes putting like numbers or like a chart to it can be helpful. So,
Mm. Yes, one of
um,
my favorite hacks with product managers when they're telling me or I'm asking about like their confidence and like whether something will hit a deadline or not is asking them to give me a percentage. Be like, are you 60% confident, 70% confident? Which I find usually gets me a lot more detailed and nuanced answer from them. And then I'm just like, how confident are you? And they're like, yeah, I think it'll happen. Or like, yeah, maybe it'll be by that date, kind of thing. So yes, I think trying to actually put a number on it forces both yourself and other people to really think hard about it.
nice. That's helpful. Okay, you mentioned giving good feedback is incredibly important as you move up in
Mm.
the ranks and you're doing less of the work and doing more of the strategy and management. Do you want to share anything more about how to give good feedback?
Yes, so I guess I talked about it more from like a creative feedback type of thing. And for creative feedback, I actually do have a pithy framework that I learned early on from other people at Google, which was so say like maybe a creative agency gives me back a design for a website or it's like the first draft of a video. I will usually try to structure my feedback by saying in three sections. One's I like, it's like I'm going to list out the things that I really like about this. The other is I wish. So instead of saying like I hate how this like is like multiple pages instead of one single page, or like how this part of the video makes me feel like this instead of I'll be like I wish it was like or like I wish we could like kind of have it be like this, or I wish that people might like know where to click on this next thing kind of thing, which I just think can help slightly soften negative feedback. And then the I wonder is along those lines too. So if there's something where my first inclination might be like, oh, I hate this, or like I really don't like this, instead of me just being like, I hate this part of the thing, I'll be like, I wonder why this is like this, which I think is really helpful because it gives the other party a chance to explain why they made the decision they made, which may end up changing your mind, or at least just like is a better way to deliver feedback versus only just like dictating what you want from them. Is like give them just ask that you're wondering why it's like this and give them a chance to explain it. So that's specific to creative feedback, but I think a lot of those principles honestly could be like if you ended up needing to give feedback to like another person or employee or somebody else you work with, I think like honestly they're pretty helpful for that too.
That is super helpful. And not just like softening, it just allows people to digest it better. So, like,
Yes.
whatever tactic is good.
Yeah, totally. Like if you come in guns blazing, like kind of negative, which don't get me wrong, there's people I work with that do. Like I just think you are more likely to trigger a defensive reaction in the other party. And then it's also just like less pleasant to work with. And I think for a lot of the creative teams I work with, it's like I want them to be happy and creative. and like motivated to work on this project with me. And so like I'm doing everything I can to like keep their spirits and morale high through it. And so I think delivering feedback in a way that helps them feel empowered and doesn't feel like I'm being like too overly critical of their stuff, I think can help with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful. All right, and now we're getting to time, so we'll do maybe one last question about your. You mentioned that working with good people is probably like the
Mm.
most important thing, right? Could you talk more about the people that you worked with and how they influenced your career development?
Oh man. I think we are so shaped by the people around us, whether that's in high school, in college, in the workplace. Like there's been so many times in my life where I didn't know like a certain path existed or wasn't interested in this thing until like other people around me were interested, and then I would like go learn more about it and then be interested too. Um, yeah, it was the question like how to navigate. Or sorry, repeat the question for me.
It wasn't so much of a question. It was just, I guess maybe it was pretty open-ended. It was more like, who were the people that you did work with in the past, and then how did they
Mm.
shape your career development? So whether that's like helping you with frameworks, helping you learn how to give good feedback, advocating for you, all the good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Man, okay, yeah, that's it's a tough question to answer because I do think it's like super broad. Like almost all the people I've worked with in my life have influenced me in one way or another, and I'm sure that's true for like everyone watching too. Um, I think I think one thing I'd maybe recommend is as you meet with a bunch of different people in the workplace or in internships or whatever it is, like identify the ones that you like either really get along with really well or like just super admire and do what you can to like you don't have to like force a mentor-mentee relationship, but I think just like trying to keep in touch with those people and checking on them every once in a while and like have them in your corner, and eventually like if you have some sticky life question you want to ask them, like asking them. I think that's really helpful. I think as I've gone through my career, I've kind of almost like there's been a few people here and there, or like a few people at each place or role I've had where I've been like, oh, I like really like this person and want to make sure I try to keep in touch. And so we'll just put in the effort to make sure I keep in touch with them and check in every once in a while and congratulate them if they have some life milestone or something else. So I think almost like collecting them like Pokemon cards, and like and know in like certain situations like this person will have really good expertise for this, or this person might have expertise for that. Because I think also like the people you work with, like they will go make their own career decisions, and some will be much different from yours. And I think it's helpful to be able to talk to somebody. Like for example, there was somebody I worked with at Google back in the day, and he left to go create his own like copywriting startup. And I recently just like talked to him of like, what has the past like 4 years looked like for you? It's probably a lot different than what it's looked like for me, but it's really helpful to hear from them on yeah, what that journey has been like. So I definitely think I mean, try to get along with as many people as possible, just as a general rule in life. But I think if there's people you really gravitate towards, yeah, invest in those relationships.
Any advice if there's someone who feels like really senior compared to you? Do you have any tactics on like how to approach them in a way that doesn't feel like, I don't know, like that makes everyone feel comfortable, I guess, or feels authentic?
As in, like, you want to like go ask them for advice or something else.
Yeah, like let's say you're Logan in your first year of your job at Google, and you really like this director. The director seems awesome. Maybe they're like starting some new sustainability group. Like, how did you tactically get in touch with them?
Yeah. Um, I guess I can speak to my experience at Google. I don't know if it's different elsewhere, but I have generally found people are like very open to chatting. And also people love talking about themselves. Like I just talk about myself for like 45 minutes. Not that I like love doing that, but like I think in general, if you just send a very polite, short email to somebody, be like, hey, I'm like really interested in the work you do and would just like kind of love to hear about your journey and how you got here and like what decisions you made and that sort of thing. I think like 95% of the time, people are going to be very down to give you a 30-minute coffee chat or something else. Um, so yeah, I think worst case scenario, they just like ignore your cold reach out. Hopefully not if they're like somebody you actually work with. Um, but yeah, I would say shoot your shot as many times as possible with people you admire. whether that's like sending them a message on LinkedIn, which like you might get a low response rate, but every once in a while you might get something. Or I think specifically with people you actually work with, whether if they're more senior in your organization, like they're much more likely to say yes. And like typically they are also trying to like invest in new people. And I think especially if you're like new to a role or to a company or whatever it is, like then you can almost use that to your advantage and as an excuse to like reach out to people like, hey, I'm really trying to get to know like the company culture and like how you've navigated this and how you've been successful here and like all that stuff. And again, like most people are nice and will take the time. So I'd really just say it's about don't be too shy. Like I'm not the most extroverted person of all time, but anytime I've tried to do that, it's generally always worked, which is like a super polite email. Like reaching out, I've reached out to like designers on the maps team where I was like, hey, you like do cool work. Can we like get lunch or a coffee? And people have always been super nice about doing it.
Awesome. So I heard a couple things. One was shoot your shot. The other one was make it short and make it convenient for them, like have lunch with them
Cool.
in the office, easy peasy. And then flatter them, so make them feel good. Great.
I think, yeah, I mean, you don't have to go over the top with it, but I think people are just generally happy to share what they've learned in their careers. And yeah, I think short, casual, like quick note to them, most people are going to say yes. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, well then we will end it here. Logan, thank you so much for being generous with your time and wisdom. To everyone here, thank you so much for tuning in. We will announce, or actually already started announcing our challenge winners this week. And then we're going to kick off our new challenge with OpenAI for new projects in August. So we will see you all soon. Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Bye.